first off, you can introduce yourself for us,
Hi, I'm Brittany Massey,
and you are from originally from here.
and I'm originally from Indianapolis. Yep, born and raised.
Okay, tell us a little bit about growing up.
Um, Grew up single parent household, single dad, 5 kids. We lower middle class kind of family, or at least it looked like that, apparently. But it was rough. It was rough. No mom.
Okay, so normally, people are known for, I mean, if you're going to be in a single parent household, normally it's the mother is the single parent.
Mhm.
You said it was pretty bad. How's, being raised by a single father, like, what made it bad?
Well, as a female, you miss a lot of the nurturing and the things that a mom would do. Um, just the extra care, just the little things that you miss, and then so you're a little rough. You see things from a little harsher perspective at times. Um, so growing up and becoming a mom, it took a little bit of time to learn how to get into the groove of that, and really know, what that took emotionally.
So like as once you hit, teenage years, puberty, going through that, things like that, what was that like, and having to deal with your father? Did you have any other women influences like aunties, family members?
I have a sister that's 9 years older than me, so she was already grown and out of the house, and well, she grew up with her mom. So my sister that lived at home with me, we would always go over her house on the weekends. So as a teenager, learning how to do my makeup or how to dress, she was there for that. Um, I had other women influences around, but no one was really there permanently or long enough for me to really grasp that side of things. I kind of had to figure it out on my own. So it was tough. It was tough as a teenager. You know, 3 boys in the house. They got to kind of do whatever they wanted to do, date, things like that. My sister and I were very sheltered, and my sister had learning disabilities, so I was kind of on my own. It was just.
So being a sheltered kid, did you wild out at any point
Oh
once you
yeah,
got your freedom?
oh yeah. When I got to college, I definitely went wild, partying and drinking, and I had my first son sophomore year of college, so I ended up dropping out for 2 years, and so it was it was a little crazy.
All right, so when you and I met, you were brought to us, in reference to becoming a model or aspiring model. What was how did that happen? Because I'm asking because I don't really remember every detail about it, but from your perspective, how did that happen?
Yeah, I was working um, at this call center. I was in the quality control part of it, and one of the girls that was in sales was like, "Wow, like I really like your fashion. It's really dope. Like I think you're pretty. I'm part of this modeling group. You should come. Audition." So she introduced me to Lucky, and he was like, "Yeah, cool, let's go," and went from
What
there.
do you remember about that time? Because that was, it was a while. Ooh, we're probably looking at maybe 10 years at this point.
Yeah, it was wow. It was crazy. It was kind of this whirlwind. Like the photo shoots were always real fun, always different. Got to meet a lot of different designers and photographers in the meantime. So I started doing shoots in Chicago. I did a couple of shoots out in Philly, um, and did a couple. As a matter of fact, when the library first opened, there was a huge fashion show that I was a part of. So it was a blast. I had a really good time.
Okay, now, like you're one of my examples for, we've been doing this a long time, and obviously we're still going. And one thing that I always remember about you was you were in a relationship at the time, correct?
Yeah.
And kind of, I guess before I say what I need to say, kind of describe, what you were going through at the time. You were married, or was that a boyfriend, or what?
At the time, we had just got married. I think we were married probably a couple of months right as I was really getting into the modeling. So we just got married. And at that point, it was very rocky. It was even then it was very rocky, and I think I got married because it was a comfort zone on one hand. It was very relatable to some of the things I saw growing up, and then he just made things seem like they would always get better. It would always be this, great fairy tale in the end.
So was it rocky prior to the marriage, or?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so he said that it was going to get better, and you eventually got married, and right around that time, the modeling started.
Yeah.
So how did he feel about you modeling?
He was good with it. He supported it. Didn't really have a thought one way or the other.
Okay. So what happened once we, because I don't remember how things, I know one day everybody was around, and then eventually girls started dropping off. And from your perspective, what happened towards the end?
Well, I think there was a lot of confusion as to where everything was going. I know we had just got into the building downtown, and we did some kind of a shoot or show or something when the new football stadium had just opened, when Lucas Oil opened. And I remember that being the very last big thing that all the girls did together. And it seemed like there was just kind of a split. There were some new girls coming on, and some girls were cool and then some girls weren't, and it just made this huge divide. And then I think there were, just other underlying issues that other people didn't know about, and it just made everybody go their own separate ways.
So where'd you go?
So I actually ended up moving to the East Coast with my ex-husband. We were here about a year after we got married. So yeah, things with the modeling was starting to taper off, and I was going through some things with him personally. So I kind of just bowed out of it as well. I think it got to a point to where I didn't really want anyone to know what was going on in my marriage. So I just really, really pulled away.
All right. Now, I didn't know you guys, as a matter of fact, yes, I do. I do know you guys moved together. And I remember at a certain point, because the things, what it is like when we're on social media, we see the timeline, we see things going, we see, changes in each other's lives. But you were out there for how long?
6.5 years.
Oh, wow. And when did you guys split?
We split. When did we split? We split a couple of times. So when we moved out there, he had started traveling a lot. He was on the road probably the first 2.5, 3 years. We were there kind of back and forth. And the abuse had slowed down a little bit. And I got pregnant with my daughter, and he ended up coming off the road, and he was home. and it probably only took her to be 8 months, and then I just couldn't do it anymore. So we split then, and I had found a place while I was still there. And then we tried a couple of times to get back together to get into counseling, and it just wasn't working. Um, so we filed for divorce out there, but it was really, really, really bad. So I ended up moving back here to Indianapolis.
So when you said he's on the road, was he a truck driver?
He was when we met here in Indianapolis, he was a mortgage broker. And then we met right around when the crash happened. So when we moved out to the East Coast, one of the companies that he had done work for previously has started to pick back up. So he was doing mortgaging finance. So he would go around to banks around the country and start doing a lot of government loans.
All right, so you mentioned abuse. Are you talking physical or mental?
Physical, sexual, mental, emotional, everything.
Wow. Okay, so that brings me to my point from earlier. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. I was under the impression, and this is just from hearsay from some of the other girls involved, that you were maybe a little bit more, I guess, closed in early on, and when the modeling started, you kind of blossomed or came up out of some type of shell. Now, like I said, you can always clarify that for me, but I was told that he was causing issues, and that kind of affected the modeling a little bit.
No, actually, okay. And this is even more embarrassing. Not even that I was really out of a shell. There would be times that we had gotten into it, and I might not have done something he liked, or maybe came in too late, or anything could have happened. And we might have gotten into a physical altercation, but I had started having marks, were visible. And, we would have shoots or be planning for shoots, and I couldn't do it. But like I said, I didn't want anyone really, one, I didn't really want anyone to know, but two, some of the girls that were in the group were really vicious, and, there was no real friendships between the majority of us. So, that wasn't something that I wanted to share.
Right. Now, granted, the information that I got, it wasn't in a malicious way.
Yeah.
It was just more of, this is what's going on. And I guess they saw you, anytime that we work with a lot of those girls, some of them, they would start out and they would be a little bit shy, or, and as we started to, we were working, a lot of them would start to blossom, and they would really start to get into it and become more comfortable, taking photos, and they would start to glow to a certain degree. Mm-hmm. And that's basically where where the information that I got was coming from. Like, Brittany's doing really well, she's getting into it, and, things are moving along pretty well. So, I will say that it always bothered me. Granted, I didn't have the information that you're giving me now, but I always thought that was one of the reasons why you had some issues was due to, your significant other. So yeah. It's like it's one of those things where when I'm talking to people, and especially dealing with women, and we're talking about pursuing careers and things of that nature, it's one of those things that bothers me, because I don't like the fact that women allow men to kind of stop them from doing things that they want to do. So,
yeah,
anytime I think about that, you in particular are one of the main ones that I think about when we're talking about that type of subject. So,
well, it's funny, because that's how women are groomed. Women are taught to be pretty and speak well, and this is how you keep your man happy and satisfied. And when you are with a man, these are the things that you have to put up with in order for him to love you and marry you and be there for you. And that's not just in, unhealthy relationships. That's just the majority. Women are taught to be these absolutely, beautiful people and somehow have a job and career and somehow be a mom and somehow, keep all these things together while pleasing her man. And it didn't take, just this relationship. It was this relationship plus a lot of counseling, and then to kind of see a pattern, not just with me, but even with other women, to say, like, wait, no, I don't have to be your ride or die to be appreciated, or, I don't have to be, all of everything you want me to be, and forget that I have hopes and dreams and goals and aspirations, and just follow you.
Right. And those are some of the issues that I take with it, because I feel like, yes, you should, do everything in your power to keep your guy happy, and he should do the same. I just don't like when, you're basically doing it to your detriment.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of women, I don't know what can be done to help that. I know there are a lot of women groups and women empowerment type of events going on, but I think that I've seen it so many times. You're not the only one. I mean, women are modeling and then they get pregnant, or they're aspiring, whatever.
Yeah.
And then they get with a guy, and then all of those dreams go out the window because it becomes all about him. So, those are things that I always think about, and I try to tell them, hey, you could be in a relationship, but you can still do what you need to do. You don't need to give all of that up. So, explain Brittany's story for me.
I had changed my Facebook page to that because when I moved to the East Coast, even though to some people it looked like, oh, she's just following this guy and he's just controlling her and, all these things. Really, it kind of started even before that. I woke up the day after I said I do and thought to myself, what did I just get into? And it terrified me. And then, I kept trying to live life and we go through this whole thing. And then when he said, well, let's move, even then I'm like, no, there's got to be a way to get out of this marriage. And even though I believed with my whole entire heart the vows that I took, it just, I couldn't do it. And as I was going through my Bible and trying to find, like, okay, God, there's got to be something in here that says I can get out of this. And there was nothing. It just all kept pointing back to me, things within me that I needed to fix and things within me that I needed to learn to love and be okay with. So when I changed it, that's really what it was. Me becoming me and being okay with whoever that was going to be. So when I moved out there, like I said, the first couple of years he was gone. So I had to make friends, and it was through church, and I saw Mary Kay, and I still did modeling. So met people that way, and then jobs and things like that. So, I started to meet people and network, and through each interaction, it just kind of became more and more about, just finding me in the midst of all of the craziness. But along the way, I kind of stopped posting on Facebook as much, even Instagram or Twitter or any type of social media outlet, because I found that the journey was one that I really, really needed to go through, like by myself, within myself.
So how does, can you explain how, for example, there's a story out right now where Bow Wow and his girlfriend just got into it, and there's two mugshots side by side. He's scratched up. She looks fairly intact. How does, when you're in a relationship that's abusive physically, what happens the first time? How do you get from it happening the first time until, the relationship lasted for however long after the first one?
Wow. Honestly, I think it has a lot to do with your background. Whether it be that's what you've seen at home, or that's how guys were in high school or whatever, and it becomes this comfort zone. So it happens the first time and he says, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. But in my case, it was lavish gifts or expensive trips or, just all of these big grand gestures. Okay. And then it happens again, and then again, and then again, and then again. And then you're so entangled in it that you start to think that you're the one that's crazy because he tells you that the fights are your fault and that if you wouldn't have said this or looked at him that way or, agitated him like this, your mind starts to tell you that all of the things that he's saying is real. And you're so lost in the relationship that you can't find the line from reality and fantasy that he's created. Well, then by that time, you're even mixed in financially and you're trying to figure out, okay, everything I have is in this. How do I get out of it?
And one thing, okay, so how the cliche, in regard to, parent, single parent or even having both parents is that women need their fathers. So being that you were raised by a single father, you would think that you would be more prepared for that type of thing.
Yeah.
So what went wrong there?
I mean, in all honesty, my dad, on one hand, he's this great hero, this single father that raises 5 kids by himself when his wife leaves and becomes an addict. And my mother was already an addict and I had been in and out of group homes. So he just seems like this hero. But then on the other side of the coin, he even in himself was abusive, a womanizer. We would see women in and out of the house, the way he treated my stepmom, the way he, would speak to women in general. You see that and you think that it's normal. And then to be sheltered and not to see how, other families lived. When I became an adult, it was like a culture shock. Like, oh, so how I grew up wasn't normal at all. And then I came from a generation where you didn't talk about your issues. And I think that's probably first the biggest reason why women stay for as long as they do is because we don't speak out enough about it. Whether it be we're ashamed, we're fearful, he threatened us, we don't think anyone could help or no one would understand. And so you're quiet, you don't say anything.
Oh man. So during the marriage, so you didn't have anybody to turn to?
Well, my family knew, but we were all in such different places in our lives that it was kind of hard to be reached. And I was going through a couple of other things as well. So then when I moved out to the East Coast, everybody loved him to pieces. And, he was just this great guy. So outside looking in, people were like, no, he's not doing that. No, him, that guy, never. And I'm like, no, really, this is what's really going on. But I think even when I finally was comfortable enough to really tell people what was going on, the next part of it was me, you know, um, saying that I have had enough and I love me enough to get out. You know, when you don't know what self-love is, it is a really, really tough game to play, trying to get out of situations like that.
Gotcha. Now, there's, we're going through the Me Too movement era right now and women's empowerment. I've seen quite a few discussions because now there's so many different ways where, dealing with women, men dealing with women in general, where they're talking rape culture, with
Yeah.
catcalling, they're talking, what and what isn't rape, when couples are married, can you rape your spouse? And one thing you did mention in particular was sexual abuse. Now, I mean, I've seen people debating about it heavy, and some people say that, well, how can I rape my wife? Or, you know, we're married, kind of break that down.
When you're in the middle of a physical altercation and your spouse pins you to the floor and you cannot move, you can't scream or you'll get hit. You can't fight because you're smaller than he is. You don't have the same strength and your clothes are being ripped off of you. And he's shoving his penis into you as hard as he absolutely can while you're still pinned down and you can't do anything about it. Yeah, that's rape. Or when uh, we had gotten into an argument and he grabbed me by my neck and choked me until I passed out. And when I woke up, I didn't have any clothes on. And there was blood on my legs and I couldn't figure out what happened. And he was gone, nowhere to be found. And he came home probably 3 hours later and he said, I wasn't sure if you died. He choked me, raped me, and left me there.
Is a divorce just a straight divorce or not?
Is it enough? Is that what you said? No. Because even after the divorce, there were still threats. There was still he would still pop up and follow. No, it doesn't just stop there. For yourself or sometimes for that person, depending on what the nature of the relationship was. Thankfully for me, when our divorce was finalized, he moved back to the East Coast with his family. So, and our divorce took a while because we had a daughter and he was very, very vindictive. So it wasn't, just a easy sign papers.
Now, when I say enough, I mean from your standpoint was, because that's pretty brutal, and my thought process is like, why? Like, what did he gain from that? Because that's not that's not like you're already his wife. It's one thing to hit on someone, but then to go that far is a little extra. I mean, all of it is terrible, but it's like that's like you have to be kind of twisted in the mind to do something like that. And
Yeah.
I mean, that bothers me a little bit. I'm sorry, but
For me personally, no, it wasn't enough. And my healing didn't just start after the divorce process. In order to even get out of it, I had to start my healing process within the situation. So I was married on paper for 10 years, but we only were together maybe about seven and a half. So while I lived out on the East Coast, the pastor of my church would have women's groups. Every single Tuesday, she would have a women's group. And it was great because it wasn't just for women who went to the church. It was just all women with obviously a Christian base. But we talked about any and everything. And within that group, I was able to identify what was within me that made me think that I wasn't worthy of a healthy relationship or love, or why I didn't love myself enough to get out of the marriage, sooner, or to have gotten married, or, whatever. So really, I had to learn how to create this, mirror and start changing things about me inside. And then I met a therapist, and I was in therapy for about 2.5 years. And then when I moved back to Indianapolis, it wasn't enough to just say, okay, what does a healthy relationship look like? What do I need to do for myself when it comes to dating men, or, things like that. It was an entire transformation. It was looking at all of my relationships and, starting with kids' dads, starting with my own family, and really figuring out, what parts of those relationships kept me there and what made me attracted to that type of man. And once I figured those things out, one by one, I started really drawing back from those relationships and started to keep a distance, a very healthy distance for me, so that I could figure out how to, get on a different path, because I was even just within myself, just a very, very self-destructive path. And then I think having my daughter really, really helped, because not having my mom there, I know that I really wanted her to see something completely different than what I saw growing up.
So are you in a relationship now?
No.
And that was going to be one of my questions in regard to relationships in general, because one thing that I've noticed, when women are going through something, or they're going through, a particular bad relationship, they may go through a few of them in a row.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's, well, the guy doesn't do this, the guy doesn't do that. And it's like, there's a lot of men in the world, just like there are a lot of women in the world. And a lot of times the guy who is for you is not necessarily the guy that you want.
Yeah.
Or the group of guys, there may be a particular type of guy that you go for, but it's like a lot of times, even with men choose women all the time who aren't a great fit for them, and it creates this toxic relationship. So I know you just mentioned that, going through therapy and things of that nature kind of showed you what was what in regards to picking a particular type of guy. But even with him being abusive, is that something that you were able to see early in the relationship prior to it happening? Did you get any signs, or did you ignore the signs?
I ignored the signs because when we met, I didn't realize they were signs. I mean, I was 22, 23 when we met. I was, fairly young. So coming out of the childhood that I was raised in, and then having a kid, and then having a kid, and then getting married, like, it all happened so fast that I never had time to really figure out or know that, oh, this is a red flag or that's a red flag, because I was so used to seeing it, So when I started to learn about what those look like, then yeah, I can go back now and say, oh, I ignored all of those signs.
Okay. I have conversations with friends and business partners all the time because I'm a guy who looks for red flags early. And, I still don't have any children. And there's reasons why I try to stay out of situations like that because, like even with, Lucky doesn't mind me telling this, but me and Lucky talk about women all the time. And one thing that I always tell him is, you see a lot of that stuff early on. Like you can tell when a woman is going to be jealous because she'll say certain things that it's like, okay, this is going to be a problem if I continue. So I'm one of those type of people who I see this coming, so let me cut it off right then and there. And it's been real helpful, and it's I stay out of drama. I don't really deal with a lot of that stuff. I've never had my cars keyed and windows busted, none of that because I think I don't think everybody has it, but I think it's a gift to a degree to me because it's like made me avoid a whole lot of things that I shouldn't have to go through. And I think with women, I really, whatever works, whatever, if it's therapy, if it's dads being more in your life or having both parents in a household, whatever works, whatever that's gonna be, I think that women need it especially a lot more because they end up with people who, who are manipulative and things of that nature. So,
yeah. And like I said, it's so deep that it can't just be about men, especially for women. Like I said, I had to really take a look at every single relationship that I was involved in, friendship, family, work relationships. And I had to really break it down and say, is this toxic? Do I see red flags? And if so, how do I remove myself from this? And I'm not really one to burn bridges, but I definitely made sure that I started to keep a safe distance from people that I could see those red flags in that were for me. And it's funny, even the post that I had put on Instagram that had you reach out to me, I met this guy through some mutual friends and saw the red flags immediately. And one of our first conversations about where does this go next, I said, I don't think we're compatible. And I ignored it. I said, okay, you know what? Let me give it a shot. I could still be feeling some of the hurts from my divorce and, that I may be looking at this wrong. So let's just test the waters. And I went really slow. It took me 6.5, 7 months for me to even introduce him to my kids. And I could kind of see things and I'm like, okay. And then even after he met my kids and I had met people in his family, I'm like, yeah, this isn't going. And it took one or two other things and I said, okay, you know what? This just doesn't work. This doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for you. It definitely doesn't work for my kids. So, I think it's just best that we move on. And he had tried a couple of different times and I kept my distance. And so, of course, the result of it is all these really mean, nasty text messages and a photo of you having sex with this chick. Well, if this is your main chick now, why would you send me a picture of you sleeping with her in a hotel room? That doesn't show any respect. So it made me, even more conscious of the fact that it's from now on, no. You don't even tolerate it. You see red flags, things that don't work for you. And so now, since that guy, I've met plenty of guys. Nope, red flag. Nope, red flag. Or even, like I said, just people in passing. If it looks like it's going to be a difficult situation or not work for me and my kids and what I'm trying to pursue.
And see, I operate like that in business as well. When you meet people and they seem like they ain't about the right,
yeah,
it's like, I don't want to deal with this person. Now, one thing about, stories that I'm hearing from women as a whole, and this is one of the reasons that I'm doing this, is because I either guys are concealing this from their friends, or I just don't have any friends who operate like that.
Okay.
Now I have friends who have maybe cheated on their girlfriends and things of that nature, but I don't have any friends that I know of that have been abusive or who have just been pretty much like shitty human beings, like all across the board. I'm hearing more stories that obviously is going on quite a bit out here, and I hear it from the women more so than I hear it from guys saying, one of my homeboys is doing this, that, and the third. So, like I said, either they're hiding it from their friends or birds of a feather flock together type of situation. Now, is this so? I talked to a young lady yesterday, and she said that she's come across quite a few men who are doing things like this as well. Is it as common as everybody is saying?
Unfortunately, it is. It is common, and it makes you think, okay, are there any good ones left? Do they exist that aren't married and that are straight for women looking for men, and that don't live at home with their mom, or like just some semblance of normalcy so that you can have a fulfilling, healthy relationship. But it is oddly more common. But I think it does kind of go back to your point, in the type of people that they hang around, or the type of people that you hang around, which is why I had to change my circle quickly, because I noticed that the circle that I was in before, people who were toxic and, only talked about this or only did that or only hung out and did these kinds of things, those were typically the guys or typically the girls, and it was all drama or abusive or whatever, versus you start to get into a different type of crowd of people who have those levels of discernment, and you don't see it as much. But those are very few select people. It's not a majority yet where you find healthy relationships. But I think that's what's so great about the Me Too movement, is now so many people are speaking out on the physical abuse, the sexual abuse, and all these things that are happening to women, that I hope it really just shuts it down and you start to see less of it.
Now, I'm a little bit, I ain't gonna say I'm on the fence, but from a male perspective, I agree with everything that is happening with the Me Too movement that is legit, but there's that other side that is becoming dangerous, because at this point, like I said, when they say rape culture, they're bringing that down to simple catcalling, but I've heard from women that, when guys are trying to holler at them and they turn them down, then they start getting disrespectful. Now, I've never seen it like in my real life, but I've seen it online and things of that nature. But it's kind of like, where do we draw these lines? Because assault, even sexual assault, rape, molestation, all of those terms, they all mean something. And now certain words are being used, and like the media could put up for example, like they'll put up a headline that says, shots rang out at a club, 5 people injured. Okay, and 5 people injured could have been 5 sprained ankles. So nowadays, these words are being used, and they're calling such and such a rapist, calling such and such a pedophile. But it's like, it's starting to get dangerous. We're in the social media era, and it's not as clear as it was before, and a lot of things are happening. Careers are being ruined. Allegations. Now I could be destroyed just off of someone saying that I did something without any proof before. So it's getting dangerous out here, and it's like there has to be some type of responsibility in making sure that you get justice, but also the person being accused gets justice as well.
Yeah, I agree. You know, unfortunately, some of, you know, some of the things that people do are always out of malicious intent. And it sucks because then you do have these platforms, very large platforms, where, you have this vendetta against this person or that person, and you are able to make these allegations without or with very little proof. And I agree, it gets very dangerous. I think I saw something online where this media clip where they were saying in Snow White, when the prince kissed Snow White while she was sleeping, she didn't give him permission. Would that be considered any type of assault or sexual abuse or whatever? And I'm like, it's a child's movie. We're taking this a little too far now. So I definitely agree with that. I think there does have to, be boundaries and rules and regulations. But I think women need to just have a safe place where, one, they can express, things that have happened, and if needing to seek justice, be able to do that, but also, be able to be in a society that is conscious enough to know that not everyone does things for the right reasons. And, being able to follow those stories intently, without just favoring the woman's sometimes opinion or false allegation.
Being that you're someone who has gone through therapy and then your church group and things of that nature, do you I imagine that has healed you quite a bit, but at the same time, being that you have experienced those things, are you as easily triggered as a lot of women are when they see stories you see stories online and then you have like a lynch mob of women who are, I like to think that a lot of them haven't had the help that they need, and they need someone to go down because they didn't get an opportunity to get justice for whoever harmed them. Now, are you in that same boat in regards to, does it make you feel a certain way when you see things happen, or just how do you handle that?
For me, it's tough to see anyone go through that, of course. But I try to, again, if I'm going to hear a story, I need to know, both sides or the facts, because even for someone that has gone through it, things can trigger that, and things, can make you think of, something that might have happened. But for me, not so deeply that I feel like I have to get, justice for this person for, something someone else did. I've never, thankfully, had to take it that far. So.
Well, we're not, like, guys aren't able to ask those questions. As soon as we say, well, if I see a headline or a story out there, is my first, what I'm going to do first is say, well, read the story. Let me see what happened first before I start to make these allegations. Because, like, even with the little Bow Wow and his girlfriend situation, people are making fun of him because he's the one with all the scratch marks on his face. Well, if she was the one with the scratch marks, then he'd equally be made, it'd be a problem either way. So he is in a lose-lose situation.
Yeah.
And apparently, like, I don't follow along with their, with their reality show and whatever else is going on, but apparently from what people are saying is that they do this all the time. And it's kind of like, it's just as easy, just like with cheating. I always tell even my friends that are cheating, I don't condone it, and I'll tell them, look, it's just as easy for you to let this woman go, and then you're free to do your thing.
Yeah.
Like, why you're adding a bunch of extra work to to try to cheat and hide it and have multiple phones,
Yeah.
whatever else you're doing. I'm all about the path of least resistance. You know, what's going to make my life as easy as possible, and that just seems like a bit much for me. Like renting hotel rooms, and it's a lot. You know.
Well, and I think we forget that this is something that has been going on. You know, not just us, but you know, our parents and their generation and grandparents and their generation. And the difference is now we've got social media, whereas it wasn't before. So yeah, it was a lot easier to hide it. And the comical thing about it is that now that you know, it's harder to keep those kinds of secrets. Well, like you said, why? Either be with the person or don't be with the person. But I've never really been one to get caught up in, those kinds of things. I'm always for let's support and let's change, our justice system and how we see things. And, let's give women, even boys that have been abused, a platform to be able to speak and get the help that they need. And I'm always in support of that, but only if it's with the intent to really help people get better.
So 2019, it's a new year.
New year.
You seem, to be doing pretty well. You got a good energy about yourself.
Thanks.
And, so where do we go from here?
Wow, where do we go from here? Honestly, I almost feel like I'm catching up on all the time that I lost. I was definitely that girl that even outside of the abuse, I went so hard for my kids and for my marriage that I was so lost in what I wanted or heck, just what I needed as a person, so really just on that path, like, rediscovering what it is that I want in life and really going for it and not waiting till tomorrow or, the doubts and the fears that a lot of abuse and things can bring to the table, and just going for it.